Welcome to Inside Racing. Many politicians down through the years have viewed the racetrack as the perfect place to test the mood of the electorate. Sir James Killen is one high-profile politician who has enjoyed racing as an owner and a modest punter for many years, often listening to the views of rank-and-file voters on Brisbane's racetracks. Sir James left politics when the Fraser government was toppled in 1983, leaving behind a distinguished career of 28 years, 7 of them as Minister for Defence. During those years, Sir James became one of the Liberal Party's most eloquent parliamentary performers. Life has taken Jim Killen on a fascinating journey from his earliest and happiest days as a jackaroo in outback Queensland. I feel I should call you Sir James, but you'd tell me you prefer that I didn't.
Well, why not Killen or simply Jim? I've been called many things in my life. There's no form of insult that really upsets me. If the insult is novel, my reaction is to turn round and applaud the insult, because insults I just let fly over my shoulder or return them in kind or better them in class.
You didn't appreciate the insult that was handed out to you by a schoolmaster at the Brisbane Grammar School around 1938, when he discovered that you'd been running a book on the Melbourne Cup of that year.
Well, yes, he whacked me, confiscated the money, I took a dim view, and I ran away from school. I went to the bush. I went out to central Queensland to a large property, Portland Downs. I became a jackaroo, and I was to spend some 5 years in the bush. Mind you, I interspersed those 5 years with studying. I rode a horse some 28 miles to the headmaster to get advice so that I could make it into aircrew in the Royal Australian Air Force, which I did. But I just took a dim view of being whacked for running a book on the Melbourne Cup. I thought he had an impoverished sense of humour.
You've said many times that the years you spent as a jackaroo were the highlight of your life and an utterly invaluable experience.
There's no doubt about that. The 5 years that I spent in the bush before I went into the Air Force, and I was in the Air Force a few days after my 18th birthday, those 5 years were invaluable. Why? Simply because they taught me how to treat people, tough people, individuals who regarded themselves as being important, pompous people, name them, the lot. I'd seen them all in the bush. They had no effect on me whatsoever. I just enjoy people, always have, and always will.
Another one of your famous quotes from those early days, you said you've crutched thousands of maggoty sheep, been thrown from just as many horses, and rubbed shoulders with hundreds of rough and tumble types.
Well, there's no question of that. The jackaroos on Portland Downs had to take horses from the breaker. If I've learned to do one thing, it was to ride rough horses. And many a buster was involved there. On one occasion I was thrown from I conceive a little yellow mare now. She threw me in the general direction of Burke. I landed on my nose. It was broken, cheekbones broken. I put my teeth through my tongue. The mark is still there to this day. Blood everywhere. I said to the manager, I think I should see a doctor. Go and rinse your mouth out with salt and water, you'll be all right. And I have been, but I've been inarticulate ever since.
I don't think so. Eventually the time came for you to brush away the trail dust and set your sights on a career in law, a very hard slog. How did you handle that slog in those restless years of youth?
I had to go back to school. I had to matriculate to get into the University of Queensland, and I studied night and day to make sure that I could pass the examinations. I did, and I did law, and I've practiced at the bar in this state for over 40 years in all sorts of jurisdictions. If you were to go up to Pyland Creek Prison, I think you could be assured that a warm welcome would await me from former clients. All sorts of characters, all sorts of crimes, ranging from murder, burglary, the lot. They're all there. And I'd experienced the lot. And it was a useful taming of the Irish spirit that lurked and still lurks in Killen.
In 1961, you exploded onto the political scene when you won the Queensland seat of Moreton by a skinny number of votes. I believe they were communist preferences in the main.
No, they were converted from infinite variety. There were Labor voters who, their conversion came my way. E.J. Ward, Eddie Ward, the late Eddie Ward, who was as tough an egg as I ever met, he said, "You got here in communist preferences." I said, "It doesn't matter how a horse gets in, as long as the horse gets in. Whether he goes through an opening on the fence or comes 4 or 5 wide, comes through an opening as long as he gets in."
Yeah.
I got in, and I've never apologised for that fact.
Now, the Menzies government had its back to the wall at the time.
Yes.
And there seems little doubt that your winning the seat of Moreton saved the day.
Well, unquestionably, I was the majority. Regrettably, I didn't propound my views. I didn't know then what I know now. Otherwise, I could have made an interesting log of claims on the late Sir Robert Menzies.
Now, the fact that you had single-handedly saved the Liberal Party in that particular election didn't sit well with Sir Robert Menzies.
Well, it appeared not to, although rumour...
You taunted him a little over the years about that, didn't you?
Well, yes, Killen, you are magnificent. And that became part and parcel of the political jargon. Mm. He never raised it with me. Used to taunt me occasionally, but he never raised it seriously with me. Indeed, he was jocular about the whole business.
Did he have a sense of humour?
Immense sense of humour. Dry, a wry sense of humour, but unquestionably the humour was there. And he wasn't frightened to direct the humour at himself. And I regard that as a great landmark. People who can direct humour at others, that's one thing. But to be able to direct humour at yourself, that's an entirely different, emancipating force that is unleashed.
You served with distinction in the Fraser government.
Correct.
I've read many of your comments and excerpts from your book, and I got the distinct feeling that he wasn't one of your favourite people.
Well, we had differences of opinion. We had different backgrounds. He had a background which I would describe as a background of relative ease compared with my background. I don't think that Malcolm had served anything comparable with my time as a jackaroo. I don't think he'd slept in a mustering camp using a saddle as a pillow. I don't think he'd mixed with rough characters in shearing sheds as I had. I enjoyed the roughness of the bush, the toughness of the bush, and of the people who contributed. I enjoyed them. And I found Parliament, the tough ones there, the E.J. Wards, the Clyde Camerons, I found them easy to take. They didn't worry me in the least.
You mentioned a name earlier, that of Clyde Cameron.
Yes.
A minister in the Whitlam government, one of your great friends, and he was instrumental in stopping Jim Killen in full flight during one of your most fluent parliamentary addresses.
Yeah, a simple device of sending me a note which read, "Killen, your fly is not done up." So I had to stop and to check, and that stopped me from continuing. I keep in regular touch with him. Indeed, I spoke with him on Sunday. He's another extraordinary Australian. He's 92. The ex-shearer, tough and rough, but a wonderful, warm human being. And I'm very, very fond of him.
You were a truly unique person during your years in federal politics, inasmuch as you had as many good friends on the opposite side as you had within the Liberal ranks. And I know that was a source of wonderment on occasions to your colleagues.
Well, no doubt, and I think it deserved a few of them. The best friend I had in the Parliament was Fred Daly. We threw a lot at each other, a lot of insults at each other. Some of the things he said to me wouldn't be regarded as being particularly flattering. That didn't worry me in the least. For example, if ever I'd use the expression, "in the hollow of my head," and Daly'd say, "of course there's plenty of room there." That wouldn't worry me in the least.
No.
And
you appreciated his wit and his timing.
Immensely. We would dine together, and whenever the two of us would dine together at a table, people on both sides would say, "What on earth are these two up to tonight on the adjournment?" And he'd get up and he'd bore it into me, and I'd bore it back to him.
Your friendship with Fred Daly and your admiration for that gentleman was exceeded only by your empathy with Gough Whitlam. And to this day, you have regular contact.
I talk to Gough every week on the telephone. We exchange confidences about an infinite variety of issues. Never once has one of those confidences been breached in any shape or form. His wit today at 89 is as keen as it was at 69. I enjoy his company immensely. I enjoy the company of his wife Margaret immensely. She has a delightful, delicious, feminine wit, manners galore, and she's not frightened to pull him up. "Don't eat that!" And he will defer from eating it. and seek to observe whatever observation.
I would have imagined that a common interest in horse racing would have created a friendship between yourself and Andrew Peacock. I feel I'm wrong.
There was never a fierce friendship between Peacock and Killen. Peacock's background was totally different from mine. His electorate, or his parish, as I refer to the electorate, was totally different from mine. And if I wanted to lose votes, then I'd take Andrew through the parish of Morton, so people could see and listen to him. But no, we were not close friends, and he was the one who asked me to leave. I probably could still be there today if Peacock had not asked me to leave.
Can you recall your very first foray into racehorse ownership?
Yes, my close friend in racing was a distinguished Queenslander, James Joseph Kennedy, and we raced a number of horses together with the late Judge Edmund Broad, DFC. Jim Kennedy and I remained close friends. We raced a number of horses. We've won in every state in Australia, save South Australia, Western Australia and Tasmania. And I remember breaking away from a cabinet meeting and coming back grinning broadly, and the Prime Minister, Malcolm Fraser, "Where on earth have you been?" Well, I said, "I've just been listening to some marvellous news. We've just won the Labor Day Cup with a horse called In the Purple."
Pay the Purple.
Pay the Purple.
A son of In the Purple.
Son of sired by In the Purple.
Yeah.
Ridden by a delightful young lady, Linda Jones from New Zealand. And it gives me great pleasure to be able to tell the Cabinet just that little bit of news. I think it breaks the tedium of our discussion.
You did start a horse in the Melbourne Cup by the name of Wellington Road in the 1982 Cup won by Gurner's Lane, and whilst unplaced, he was only 3.8 lengths from the winner. Wellington Road ran a very respectable race for you.
Yes, well, do you know, nothing improves a horse more than ownership. And when you get to the stage, you get close to them and you say to the horse, "Now you will win this race for us, won't you?" And some of the horses will turn around and glare at you, and some will look at you knowingly and give you the impression, "Yes, we're going to do our little best." Everyone aims to win the Melbourne Cup. The Melbourne Cup is not just a horse race. It is a great national institution. It's an institution that attracts the interest of millions of Australians. This country comes to a virtual halt, a standstill, when the Melbourne Cup is being run. I think it's a good thing. Some of my more evangelical friends may despise and dispute what I have to say, but I think it's a great national institution.
It's hard to find a horse that can win 12 races, but you had one by the name of Half Scotch, with a group of friends including a former great Australian racecaller, the late Vince Curry.
Well, Vince Curry, there again, you accurately describe him. He was a great friend, and I was one of his unfeigned admirers. I admired the facility with which he could call a race. He was a great horse. He had didn't win anything conspicuous, but it doesn't matter if you win a horse at race at Wallumbilla, Muckadilla, or Cootamundra. If you've won a race, you think you've won the lot.
Your horses have been trained by some Queensland legends, such as Jim Atkins.
Yes, one of the turf's life's gentlemen. A gentleman, most courteous of human beings, beautiful manners. I've never seen him upset. I've never heard him rouse on anybody. I've never heard him use coarse, rugged, unpleasant language. He's been an extraordinary human being, and he was one of the great assets to racing in this state, and if I may presume to say so, one of the great assets to racing in Australia.
Roy Dawson was another one of your winning trainers.
Yes, Roy was different from Jim Atkins. He was somewhat quiet, reticent, not given to a wide use of language, wide use of words, but what Roy said he meant. I enjoyed his company very much.
Switching direction again to jockeys. You speak very highly of Roy Higgins.
Well, Higgins' record speaks for itself. The number of races he has won through his personal skill, his judgment of pace in a race, knowing when to take the horse through, when to take advantage, when to take a horse to the lead, away from the field. And there were other jockeys, Darren Beedman, great jockey, a gentle person. Neville Selwood, I found courteous, unfailingly gentle. And I was patron for many years of the Queensland Jockeys Association. I found their company agreeable. I found to take their advice doubtful as to what they may win on, but unfailingly courteous in their manner, and always polite, certainly to me.
You've made your mark as a famous federal politician, as an author, a raconteur, a company director, a barrister, and a jackaroo. You've crammed 2 lifetimes into one.
I've been very fortunate that I've been able to do it. And no matter what I've done in life, I still regard the human being as the most important person or being in this world. And no matter what a person may do, or what a person may say, no matter what a person may hold or possess, they still command my respect, provided they have, 1, manners, and secondly, a sense of humour. They're the 2 great qualities that I admire and always have, and please God, I always will.
A nasty rumour persists that you are approaching your 80th year.
That happens to be the truth. I'll be 80 in a few weeks' time. Don't feel it. I feel ready to go round again, but I won't be at liberty to go round again. I'll have to go elsewhere. God will have to take long service leave to hear my confession.